Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. We got Travis returning, we got Chris returning, and I am stoked for this, as should you be. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which is of course Friday for The Collective and Wednesday for The Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. Other than that, if you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, where have you been? Because it has been going for a while. We're at edition 24 now, and make sure you get into that. It's got all the information from the episodes, as well as a little bit of brain candy for you to snack on throughout the week. It is a excellent read. Get it in you. I just want to hit this real before we get into anything else. Dan C., good morning, gentlemen. May the natural evolution of the day contain an obstacle and ass to kick. I dig it. I dig it. That's a good way to start this off. Quick little intros, and then we'll get right into the convo. Travis, why don't you hit us up? 10 to 15 seconds. What do you got?
Travis Denman, retired Army guy. Moved into contracting after the Army. Did that for a while, retired. Now I'm a full-time student studying aviation.
Bam. I like it. I've been loving your videos as well. The flying around stuff. Just so much fun. Chris, cool. How about yourself?
Yeah. My name's Chris Lee, former Green Beret. I'm always stoked to come on the show and hang out with you guys. The conversations are always a ton of fun. But since leaving the Army, I've been a full-time executive and mindset coach.
Bam. I love it. Coaching the world abroad. Shaun, how's life out in the mountains?
Things are good. I'm looking forward to this conversation because literally the guest panel right now, from the first time we kind of kicked things off on The Collective till now, these guys have got to watch us evolve, and we've got to watch them evolve, not only within the podcasting genre, but in their personal lives. So I love the fact that we, to some degree, as a group, have history that we can see our own personal and group evolution. So I dig it.
This is a good start right off the bat. But so it was Travis's idea. I hit him up and I was like, hey man, what do you think we should talk about today? And he came up with this. So I'm going to give the floor to him right off the bat. Travis, what were your first thoughts when this came to mind? What was it tingling in the back of your brain?
Maybe it's just the realization kind of I'm getting old, man, and your life changes. I have a son who's a relatively new father. He's got little babies, 2 of them running around. They're awesome. And then now I have grandkids running around. Got 3 of those, and things are just different than my thought processes are different than when I was in my son's shoes. When I was a young soldier and had a relatively new family, my priorities were different. I was a team guy, so when you're living that lifestyle, your whole being is kind of dedicated to the team. Obviously you're a family man too, but there is a little bit of understanding from, household 6 that, my priorities of work are work, and it's just kind of the way it is. When the phone rings and you have to go, you have to go. So there is no questioning that, or you don't exist in that environment. Right. So as you evolve and become a grandpa, things change and you just have a different outlook on things and you're able to take it slower. We've heard the old 2 bulls on a hill joke looking down at a bunch of cows, and if you hear the punchline, it kind of rings true. The old guy wisdom you kind of find the point where you're that old guy and you're imparting wisdom upon young people and trying to anyway, explaining your lessons in life that you've learned and trying to impart those lessons on them. Sometimes you see a lesson that they're about to learn and you choose to keep it to yourself and let them learn the hard way because it's better for them to do that, so just kind of a realization in myself that, I'm getting older and, I want to help the next generation do well, and as much knowledge as I can impart on them and and hope my experiences contribute to their betterment, then that makes me happy.
I dig it. I dig it. I really like this. This is a great place to start too. But Chris, what were your first thoughts when you saw this from the
Yeah,
email?
yeah. I'm super stoked about this topic, and I'm glad Travis brought up fatherhood. I hope one day to be a grandfather as well. Hopefully not for a long, long time though. My oldest daughter is 19. She just enlisted in the Air Force. I'm stoked for her. But man, that is weird because to me she's still little. She's still a little kid, but she's now her own young woman, and starting her own career. And it is bananas. For me, it's the like Travis was saying, my perspective and some of my priorities have shifted over the years. Yeah, when you're a team guy and you got to go to work, you got to go to work, and that was difficult. But I think it set things up well, and I hope that I've set my daughters up for success moving forward. Um, I also realize that m my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter is now getting to this stage, but, uh, everything I say is dumb in their eyes, and so, uh, I have to I have to, 1, be aware of that, not get too frustrated, when they don't listen to me, um, and then also be patient, because hopefully one day they'll come back around and I won't be so dumb in their eyes anymore. But but amidst that period, I've gotten to the point where it's like, man, I have to I have to live the standard, and not just tell them the standard, because they won't always listen to my words. And so those lessons I'm trying to teach, it's if they're not very receptive of the words coming out of my mouth, I have to be the example, that I want to show to them, and that has to be the lesson moving forward. And then maybe when you extrapolate that even further, it's like, yeah, we should just do that all the time. Just be the standard. Live live to the standard that you think is right, and let that be the example. You know.
I dig it. Shaun, what do you got?
Well, I'm in line with the boys, so I'm going to try to play with it a little bit. So, one of the interesting things about the evolution of a man or the evolution of a human being is that it's a process that requires you to pay attention to your evolution in order for you to understand that you've evolved. So, the more you pay attention to your evolution, the less of a surprise it will be when you hit your 70s and start looking backwards and wondering what you did. And so I think you've got to keep thinking about what you've done in phases so that you can understand not only where you're going, but how you get things done, how you accomplish things, how you move through the phases of life. What phases of life are we talking about? So we've already talked about a couple. One is one day you wake up and you realize that you're super freaking old. That's a phase of life. Here's another phase of life. You have your first kid. Bam. You have your first grandkid. Bam. Your kid joins the service. Bam. Your kid graduates university. Bam. Your kid stops listening to you. Bam. Your kid starts listening to you. Bam. All these little phases of life, hey, they will slip by unless you're paying attention to the details. And by details, I mean like actually establishing what your phases are. What are phases? If you don't understand your phases of life, and phases, by the way, aren't assigned to a calendar day, it's not like when you turn exactly 30, that's a new phase. My phases have been, to some degree, based on my careers. Each career has been a phase of my life. And then let's take phases of careers and whoosh, set them to the side. Here's some other phases. My family. Whoosh, let's set some other phases. Accomplishments. I wore this shirt specifically so that we could identify that our phases of life, like this is a World Solo Championship shirt, some of these phases in our lives aren't about family, aren't about our jobs, are about like our own personal little things that we've put up on a tiny little I want to make that happen pedestal and pursue it, like Travis. When I was putting this shirt on, I was thinking about Trav because he's got his own world championship pursuit of wanting to become a radarific pilot. And so I don't want that for me. I want it for him. And somehow, like, that's another phase of my life, is I've got some super freaking cool friends. And to some degree, I live kind of a bit through them as I enjoy watching them pursue their phases. So, like, the phases of life are as simple or as rich as you want to consider. So, that's part of my opening sequence, I suppose.
I dig it, man. This is we're already going into lots of different places, and I'm really loving where we're going right now. When I was thinking about the evolution of a man, when I was talking with Travis, I looked back at myself, obviously, and I looked back at the men that I have in my life, and I looked at the accomplishments, but it came down to like interests is the word that kind of clicks in my head when I think about this. Is that every time I get a new interest, that puts me in a different phase of life. So I get really interested in the military. That was a phase of my life. I got really interested in veteran advocacy. That was another phase of my life. I got really, at a young age, I was interested in being a father. That's still part of it. Like each one of these things crept up in my psyche of just like, I really want to do that, like Shaun was saying there. And then taking you there is one piece, being there is another, and realizing that you're actually in those moments is hard because usually you're still seeking something else. But I'm loving where this is going right off the bat. Travis, I'm going to come back to you. You got any other thoughts before we move into another question?
Yeah, I like Sean's phases. If kind of as I look back on my own life and I watch my children's lives, blossom and evolve into adulthood and things. I think about beginning, kind of where are you at? You're like a student. Basically, you're a student of life. You're in primary school, secondary school. You're kind of just figuring it out, not really sure yet. And then for me, I went from student in school to student in basic training and the indoctrination program, and then getting into Ranger Regiment. And you're still a student. You're learning how things operate day to day, and eventually you become, you're actually a doer. You're an operator. You're one of the guys that is doing things. You're doing them yourself day to day. That's your job, and you're executing these tasks, and not only at work but also in your own life. And then at some point, after doing for a certain amount of time and gathering some education and some experience and some wisdom along that path, then eventually you're going to become a leader, and you're gonna kind of point others in the right direction so that they can execute, right. They can be the operators, and you're kind of the orchestrator of those operators, and they're doing stuff. Then after you've led them, then you might evolve into being a teacher where you're teaching them how to be leaders so that they can make the next step into that, and you can kind of bump yourself up. And as you've taught, I'm sure most of us have, at least in this form, have taught some people in the past. You'd always say, you never really knew how to do it yourself until you were required to teach it to others, whatever it is. And then you achieve like the next level of wisdom, and whatever that thing is, you kind of really hit the next level of understanding for that. And then you're imparting that onto others, and then maybe as you learn more, you become a professor of this topic, whatever it is, soldiering or flying or whatever it is, stock trading, whatever. And then you're a professor of it, but you still have something to learn. Like the more we learn, the more we understand we don't know anything. So you're still like, kind of, that's the point in your life where like, oh man, I feel like I'm reading 3 books at one time. I can't get enough. Like, it's just like, I need, like, is there any way I can just put the books on my skin and I can just absorb everything? And you become a doctor of whatever it is. You got a PhD in this thing, and then you really want to teach other people, and to use the experience that you have and impart it upon them, so maybe that they can jump faster, and through them maybe they can expose you to something that you didn't know, and thus you're learning more. And it's like a big giant snowball, dude. It keeps rolling down the hill, and yeah, the phases are awesome. And the desire to learn, just in me at least, the desire to learn just kind of compounds daily, man. I learn one thing, and it's like, oh man, I gotta, like, more. It's just like I'm chasing the dragon all the time, but it's just with like skills or just, just learning data and data that applies to skills. And it's, life is pretty cool.
Yeah, life is pretty cool. And you gave me this image in my head. You guys know the Greek fates? They were actually supposedly three women in one being, and you had the young, the middle aged, and the old.
Mhm.
And each phase, each section of that kind of controlled different aspects of fate. And I think, at least what I'm getting in my head from what you're saying there, Travis, is that like we have to embody all three of those things at all times. So like as you learn, you're going to learn to a level of skill that you can then pass that on. And same thing, you're going to teach for a long time till you become a professor. I love that analogy.
Mhm.
But we have to be that at all times. We have to do all three of those separately because we can be students and teachers, and we can be professors in something and be students in others. And I dig it. Chris, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Travis was spot on. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, you know, and that is super exciting. It's for me, it's not a scary idea that I don't know something, but rather it's like, man, life is so friggin' rad that I get an opportunity to learn a new skill set or learn a new, I don't know, aspect of life. Uh, and it is exciting when you accumulate enough knowledge in a particular area that you then get to share that with other people and help them on their journey and hopefully help them avoid some of the mistakes that maybe we've made on our own. It's to me, it's just super exciting, and you're right. I think it applies to all areas of life and all phases. Um, just like being a soldier, I don't know what I don't know until it was taught to me, and then I learn it, and then I master it, and then I'm able to pass it on to somebody else. Same with like being a dad, and then yeah, eventually a granddad. It's like I don't know what I don't know because this is my first time doing life, right? But when I do learn it, it's like, man, I can't wait to share that with the people I care about, and hopefully they can learn something from it too. You know.
I dig it, Sean. What do you got?
Well, it's a bit of a different twist. And it's not because I'm bored with the subject already, because there's so much to cover, but I just can't get it out of my head. You'd said the three fates,
Yep.
Chance. And so, they represent um, the phases of our life. They represent a lot of our collective historical wisdom as a species to some degree. I mean, it's mythology, so we can't be overly precise. But I will say this, when you said the three fates, I thought of the last phase of life within those three fates. And I believe she was referred to as the old hag.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So here's an interesting thing. Just that mythology alone has designated that the back end of your life, that last phase where you're literally your most wise, you're an old hag. There's a negative connotation attached to the mythology of the wisdom of a person who's lived a long, hard life and has learned some things and now is looking to pass it on. And now they're an old hag. Now they're represented as, the mythological hag, which is makes it uncool. That last phase of life is now not what you want to be. You don't want to be her. You don't want to be that. And I don't think that's correct. Nobody should try to speed towards the last phase of their life, but no one should like not want it. I mean, if you are in the latter part of your life, you're in the last phase of your life, we'll call it. As you're listening to this right now, that a redonkulous amount of wisdom as compared to when you were 20. But what do you do with that? You know? Now you're the old hag trying to not only encourage people around you, but you're trying to impart a lifetime of wisdom to all of those around you and not knowing how. The old hag didn't know how. And so, we gather all of this information and none of us are really taught how to pass it along, not old haggish. Chris said it. His daughter or daughters and my sons and all of our kids from time to time are just over it. They don't want to hear another word from us. And so what do? As Chris said, as I've done, then you just stop talking. Then you just demonstrate how to do things well just through action. And you don't even have to say, just do what I do, or just mirror me, or just pay attention. You just don't say a freaking word. You just get on with kicking that ass, and hopefully everyone picks up what you're putting down. But that's not always the case either. And so we've got this old hag sort of extreme, and we've got this silence extreme, and we're all just trying to figure it out as we're trying to pass on this last phase of wisdom. So that was just a random thought. I thought I'd throw it out.
Oh, I'm going to dig into it because I got so many thoughts, but I got a couple comments I want to touch on as well. So Dan C jumped in here. He said, you always dislike the saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. I understand the sentiment, but some things cannot be taught without real world experience and knowledge. And I agree. And then we have Lee Freeberg jumped in here. He said, wisdom comes from experience, and experience costs time. So it makes sense that to old age is a sign of experience. Absolutely. But that being said, there's lots of people that are old age that have zero experience. So that's another part of that. So, and then we got Samara Delilah Rose says, wisdom, integrity, truth, and courage have no expiration date. And I 100% agree with that one. So I wanted to touch on this, Shaun, really quickly. And you brought up the last phase of life. But in truth, the last phase of life is right now, right? Like we could die at any point in time from anything. And to say that, you know, a certain section of our lives would be the last phase of our life kind of assumes that we're all going to make it there to begin with. So I just want to pass that back to you, Shaun, and then we can go around the table with it. What do you got?
Caught me in between coffee sips. Well, I will say this, that you're right. You know, the phase of our life is right now. This is all we've got. In fact, I was taking a shower last night and I got all lightheaded. And because I pulled my head up too fast, and you know when you get that lightheadedness, and I rode the wave. Like I let myself be all lightheaded, and I just kind of hung out in it to see if I was going to keep it together, or whether I was going to pass out and smash my silly head off of the shower tiles. And it could have gone either way. There was a moment there where I was kind of flipping a coin, and it's not because I was being casual or cavalier or being like just risky. I just like riding the wave, man. I like being in something where I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And so that's how I treat my life. And so the phase of life, I'm as alive as I can be in any moment of my life because I'm paying attention to the moment of my life. That moment in the shower last night, I was as alive as a person can be. And there was nothing going on in that shower other than me all lightheaded and wondering if I'm going to die or not today. And so every day's kind of like that, man. If you're paying attention, you're driving down the highway and you get a close call. And if you don't think like, that was interesting. What's this all about? If you're not thinking about life in that way, then life will pass you by in a split second and then everything will go black. And that'll be it. And you had no phases, literally no phases to note. And so, Chance, you're right, but you're wrong. You know what I'm saying?
I dig it. The funny thing is that I get that feeling every time I stand up. So when you're my height, that just kind of it's a part of life. You just deal with it. Chris, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, when Shaun was explaining his shower experience, I was joking around with my group yesterday that I am at the age where if I sneeze wrong, I can throw my back out, which is an interesting phase to be in, right? Because it wasn't always like that. But yeah, this idea that we could always be potentially in that final phase. We don't know when our final day is, right? And so how can you live in such a way where you are content with that impending doom, you know, where it's not a scary thing. It's like if I do go today, I am content. I'm at peace with that possibility. I hope it's not for a long time. So yeah, it's like, how do we live in such a way where that unknowing of that final day isn't scary? That's what I've been exploring a lot lately is how do I be at peace in the face of any kind of chaos, even to the point of death, right? And then the other thing that came to mind was this idea of yeah, the old hag, and that the movie the Benjamin Button came to mind. Like, how dope would it be to age in reverse? And so all the wisdom that you've accumulated over the years, you then have a body that won't throw its back out when you sneeze wrong. How cool would that be? Fun thought experiment, but that isn't reality. And so living in such a way where every day, yeah, you squeeze as much life out of the day as you can, and then simultaneously trying to teach what you do know, the knowledge you have accumulated to the people around you. I think that's what I've been trying to focus on lately.
Awesome. Travis, you got any thoughts?
Oh yeah, this is one of those ones can go all over the place because I think for me at least, like there was a time that I was really surprised that I had made it this far. You know what I mean? Like I kind of lived in my younger days pretty recklessly, and the expectation from me, although not really stated out loud, but probably in the back of my mind, is like, I mean, I don't expect to be 40. Like, I mean, there's no freaking way I'm going to make it through all this stuff, you know? And, the environment you're in, I mean, that contributes greatly, but it was a real thought back then. And it probably contributed to some of my stupidity and my willingness to do things that were grossly foolish. And, now looking back on those things, I'm like, oh man, if I would have paid more attention at that moment and not been such a jackass. But talking to Travis at that moment, he's like, dude, I'm not going to be alive in 2 years anyway. So whatever, you know, you can't really tell that lesson to that guy. You have to go through that and then get to the point where I am now so that I have the wisdom. I learned the lesson because I experienced the life in between then and now. And now I have regret, and I have tried to express that, not in any doomsday kind of way, but like, hey man, this is my experience, and this is how it played out for me. It might not play out the same way for you, but this is one example of how that life did play out. um Now I think my appreciation for the day-to-day activities is much more based on the recognition that I kind of disregarded things in the past when I was younger and I was living at that moment, and living in a reckless way and thinking, it's going to be over anyway. So whatever, not really caring so much, but not examining things or paying attention, talking more than I should have instead of listening, and just observing more than I did in the past, and the things that happen day to day. And I think that just gives me patience. I'm able to let my kids vent on me when in the past, I probably would have just stopped them in their tracks. Just be quiet. What's the problem? Here's the solution. Let's execute and fix it. Right now, because I'm old, I understand that they don't need a fix to the problem. They just need someone to listen to them vent for a little while. So I'm like, cool, cool. And I'll listen until there's a pause, and then I ask a question instead of provide a solution. And I think that's when you kind of transition from teacher to professor. You're not, no longer am I just teaching you the solution, I'm provoking you to devise the solution yourself. I'm not telling you what your primary sector of fire is anymore. You have to figure it out for yourself. Like, given this situation, what do you think? Let's talk about it. Why would a problem present itself from that location? What are the dead zones in this room? How are you going to cover down on them? Like, and in just normal life problems, just drama at work or whatever. And I think because we're older, you have to go through those things to really to become that professor and have the appreciation for life and living and longevity, because the longer you're alive, the more you realize the less time you have remaining. And even though I want to live as much as life as I can, I also understand that if you live life too quickly and try to do everything at once, you're going to miss everything also. So it's not so bad to sit on the balcony and watch the sunset. for 2 hours, you know? Like, that was awesome, right? Like, bro, we haven't done anything for 2 hours. Like, dude, we just watched a rad sunset, you know? That'll never happen again ever in the history of the world,
Yeah.
you know?
That's really hard to drop into somebody else's head, though, right? Like, and I
It
love the
is.
fact that you brought this up, the not around to feel the consequences. Because I
Yeah.
think I was the same way. I never thought I was going to make 30.
Yeah.
Like, I was in the middle of Afghanistan walking around going, like, I'm not making it out of this. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way. So I'll just do whatever I want, and then I won't have to deal with it, because you don't
Yeah.
have to feel those consequences until you do, until you're 40 something and you sneeze and your back falls out and you land on the ground and you're like, oh, what the, like,
Yeah.
I wish I had been smarter with, you know, the way I rucked or the
Yeah.
way that I loaded my packs or all these things. And you bring up a really great question, and I want to hit this to you all you guys. Was there a point where you like it was just a striking thing in your head and you were like, I can't be this guy anymore? You just looked at yourself and were like, nope, not anymore, and began a change or a shift or something like that? Because it happened to me, and I was wondering if you guys felt something similar. Was that there was a point where I was almost at a point with the divorce with my wife. I was like looking at losing my kids, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I have to do something differently. And that shifted and changed me into all kinds of things. I went and sought a different therapist. I went and tried to do all these things. This was almost a decade ago. What do you guys think? Chris, I'm going to hit you first.
Of course you are. Man, that's a really good question. I'm not sure if I can pinpoint like an exact moment, but there's definitely maybe a phase or a period where it's like, yeah, I need to do something different. A portion of that was as I was deciding to get out of the Army. I did 10 years, and I found myself kind of going on autopilot, which was running counter to why I enlisted in the first place. Like, I wanted to pursue something where success was not guaranteed. So I tried out for special forces. It worked out, but once I was kind of nearing that 10-year mark, I found myself kind of settling in and going on autopilot. And I didn't want to maybe betray the spirit of why I enlisted by taking that kind of like safe route. I know that sounds weird. Like, the military is a dangerous job, but part of my head was saying it is the safe option if you don't truly love what you do anymore, because it's, steady paycheck. You get 30 days of leave a year. You kind of know what your battle rhythm is going to be. You know how to do your job. You got retirement to look forward to in another 10 years. Like, part of that, as much as appealing as that was to me, it felt almost too safe. And it's like I had to step out and pursue something different in the same spirit of why I enlisted in the first place. And during that period, it was, I mean, like, what I do now is like I sit here at this desk, which is way different than jumping out of airplanes or clearing rooms. But it's exciting in kind of a different way. And it also, it helped me kind of refocus some of my priorities where, I mean, I seriously consider doing contracting because the pay is pretty dope. But I also didn't want to go on any more 6-month-long business trips away from my kids. And so it was like, I miss so much. I don't want to miss anymore. Like, that has now become my priorities. Like, I just want to be present as a dad, and man, maybe all of us kind of went through this period where, like, yeah, I doubt I'm going to make it to 30, or doubt I'm going to make it to 40. And yeah, there was definitely a period in my life where I experienced that. But I'm stoked with where I am now, and I'm excited for the next, hopefully next several decades moving forward. I will say though, like, I haven't totally like dialed it back and become completely tame. Like, I still rip it down the highway on my R6, and that's tons of fun. So I don't know. Maybe that was just a little bit of word vomit, but there wasn't like a specific moment where I had shifted, but it was a phase or a period where I was like, I need to readjust myself a little bit.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. There's been a couple of phases where you just don't really, I didn't really agree with who I was at the time. I
Right.
love this. Travis,
Yeah.
what do you got?
I don't think it was just profound. Maybe it was a little selfish on my part, but also, I had a motorcycle wreck in 2010, and I had just left team life, and I was in the intel section in our company, and then I had a motorcycle wreck. I was pretty jacked up. I was kind of like bedridden for a moment, and after that, I got fat, bro. I got fat, right? But then I was recovering enough, like, okay, now in my brain, it's like always like, okay, I'm gonna go back to a team, right? Like I'm gonna get back to a team. But I had to go to Afghanistan on a solo adventure as a LNO for someone, and then uh I was fat, dude. And I was like, hey man, I'm gonna be gone for 6 months. I'm kind of doing my own thing, but I'm gonna get my shit together on this trip, and I'm gonna get back to team guy, fighting weight. And while I was on that trip, just coincidentally, there was another guy in the task force that was like a wackadoo, super health nut trainer, CrossFit weirdo, like all that stuff. And he kind of helped me out a little bit. And that was kind of like from my past being an infantry guy and then an SF guy, like I was always old school knuckle dragger, like, dude, you know, just get on with it. You know what I mean? Nobody cares about how hard it is. Train harder. If it is hard, it's good for you. Like I was of that mindset for real. But that on that deployment, like I really kind of learned a lot about, physical fitness, like the right way and eating the right way. And, I was able to, get back to fighting weight, got way healthier and got back on a team. And that kind of opened my eyes a lot to the lack of education that I had in the previous, 6 or 7 years, because I was kind of fully engaged in what was going on in the teams and stuff. And I didn't really pay attention to anything else, and eating whatever's in the vending machine in the hallway was fine because up to that point, I had never experienced like nutrition causing me a problem. I mean, whatever, eat a whole carrot cake, whatever. I don't care. Like it doesn't affect me, you know? But then when I got injured and laid around for a while, recovery, and I got fat, it was like, whoa, this is a new thing. Like, I don't like it. This is not good. How do I make this go away? And I had to figure it out, and luckily I had a guy help me. And then that opened the door to, you know, all kinds of new knowledge. And then honestly, that probably really tickled the bug for seeking more knowledge, like, oh man, if I can run this fast after being that screwed up, like I bet I could do this and that, like cool. Like the first CrossFit competition that I ever entered myself, I was in the masters division, like, and it was kind of late in life to discover like maybe doing things the right way instead of the hard way. And because of that, I've read so much more and been exposed to so much more and gone to so many more seminars about all kinds of topics, not just fitness and health, but the fitness and health kind of opened my eyes to further education in all things and the understanding that really I don't know anything and I need to find it out. I need to learn. And that was really kind of had a great impact on my life. And then, you know, went back to a team, did that for a couple years, like, and then my last real gig in the Army, I was the Sephardic NCOIC. So I worked out at 37, got there, and we had, I mean, it's a pretty tough school. The attrition rate is pretty high, just from a skills mind. It's not physically tough, but it's hard. Like doing the things that are required are challenging. So the attrition rate was high, and we were trying to figure out, we need qualified guys on teams. So how can we make it less? Like when we send guys to the school, we want to be successful. We don't want to send guys here and not be able to train them, So how are we going to do that? Well, we went through a whole, training evaluation, like kind of audited the whole program and developed an instructor trainer course. And during that time, we had a entity within the Special Warfare Center called SOCEP. That was the Special Operations Cognitive Performance Center. and they had sports psychs, trainers, like all these guys, and they all sat around and kind of banged our heads together on how we could better our instruction so that the students that we got were successful, and looking at it from an instructor perspective point of view, instead of like, hey man, front side post, run harder, like that's not helping anyone. They're still failing, like, okay, well, what do we have to do? We have to have more arrows in our quiver to be able to give these guys, because not everybody's going to get it when you tell them front side post. Not everybody's going to understand it on the first go. Like, you need to figure out how to teach and not how to tell these people what to do. So that was really eye opening also. And again, it hit that little hair of like, man, I really don't know anything, dude. I need to learn more, and you're surrounded by, at the time, I was a pretty tenured dude. I had been a team sergeant for 2 teams and, been around for 18 years, and I'm pretty tenured, and I'm standing around these dudes like, man, I don't know anything about training. I thought I was Mr. Trainer, and now these guys are teaching me stuff that I had no idea. So it was really kind of a breath of fresh air, like reinvigorating to like, I need to go learn more stuff, dude. Like, I need to read all these books right now and put this stuff into practice, And then as you put things into practice, you learn more, because now you're in it, you're actually doing it. So I kind of stepped back into, operator mode, but now instead of like doing the thing, I'm teaching the thing. Like, teaching is the operation, and I'm all in on that, and it was great, and I still have that. And I think that's one thing that kind of really stuck with me, and I'm living it right now as I learn how to fly and getting different ratings. And I just did my instrument check ride a couple weeks ago, and crushed it, and I was stoked and still stoked. And I'm in commercial, and I can't wait to keep going, dude. It's a rad,
I love it. I love it. When you get to fall in love with something, I think that's the principle there, is that like once you realize that you can do more by teaching, or do more by doing this, or like I can fulfill the dream even more by accepting this new information. I love it.
Yeah.
Sean, you got any thoughts?
I do. So, much like Travis, I was old school. And, if I wanted to do something that was hard, I'd just work harder, not smarter, because we weren't actually taught how to work smarter back then. We were taught how to work harder. And through the hard work process, you'd find ways to become efficient and effective. But no one ever sat me down or us down with any science, with any deliberate protocols, with anything that was high performance related other than us becoming high performance. However, it was never really a scientific process. It was a blood, sweat, and tears process. And so you can learn a lot through that process for sure. But you can learn way more by doing that, plus adding some science to it. And so I didn't understand any science to high performance until I started my own company, High Performance Coaching. And I had to teach myself a redonkulous amount of things. All the folks that Travis mentioned there that showed up, I think you said SOSAP, that crew, I never had that. There was just me in my head creating characters called SOSAP. And so I had to learn so much. And through that learning so much, I realized how little I knew. That's the phases of life, man. Like the boy said, I didn't think I was going to make it to 30 at all. In fact, when I think of my 30-year-old Shaun, I think of that scene from, and I've said this in the past, Trains, Planes, and Automobiles, when John Candy's screaming down the highway, they've fallen asleep, look over, and it's a skeleton head on fire. Like, I had the skeleton head on fire. I just thought, like, I wasn't going to make it another day. And it's not because I didn't want to make it another day. I was just riding that fiery wave of, like, this is a pace that I don't think I can even keep up for tomorrow. Maybe like Travis, I was a bit reckless at times. And by a bit reckless, it's not because I wanted to hammer in. I just wanted to take it to the nth degree of what can I do in this moment? And that's generally how I've run my life. Even when I'm not accomplishing things, I'm actually pushing the pace so hard that I'm not sure if it's going to break or I'm going to break. And I like that feeling, man. I like that feeling of pushing so hard that I'm not sure where it's going to go. And if you do that long enough, eventually you'll come to realize that you need help. I needed help. As I started learning all the various things about high performance, I had to start talking to people who I didn't think I'd ever be talking to, as I used to think of them way back then. It was like, man, I'm going to have to go talk to some skinny pencil neck nerd about this thing. That's how that's how I used to categorize people who weren't in my past game. If they were in a white lab coat and had done quote unquote almost nothing in their life, as I used to categorize it, I was like uncomfortable around those dudes because I thought, I'm dumb, they're smart. I've lived in trenches they haven't. And so you start labeling the world to some degree and excluding a part of the world, or at least I did when I was young. But then once I learned that, man, I know nothing, I got to learn this stuff, I'm going to have to talk to skinny pencil neck nerds. 10, 20, 30 conversations later, I began to realize, and I mean, this is how you learn things. I began to realize that I was the freaking idiot in that conversation, just thinking the very, I got to go talk to a skinny pencil neck nerd is so wrong. But that's how I used to think. But then when you start hanging out and start realizing that they're cool as hell, well, that's life. That's one of the phases of life. You come out of something where you think you're quote unquote the man, and all of a sudden you're the freaking village idiot. And it's uncomfortable, man. And maybe that's why I categorize them as skinny pencil neck nerds, because that made me feel comfortable about who I was in their space. Well, years later, I'm now the skinny pencil neck nerd to some degree. And I like the feeling, man, of being more of an intellectual nowadays than I am a stab someone in the neck kind of guy. Though I can do both. I'm leaning more towards the idea that this phase of my life is skinny pencil neck nerd phase of life. And so, I think that no matter who you are, you're something, whatever your label is in your mind right now, whatever that is, try to be something else. The next phase of life is being not who you are right now.
Oh, I dig that. I got so many questions. I got a couple comments I just want to touch on before we get into anything else here. Lee Freeberg jumped in here. He said, if you knew today was your last, how would you live it? And this is a great question because that changes. Just the fact that we believe that there's going to be a tomorrow changes the way we act today. So I think this is, I'm going to get in that in the second one. But Catherine Hirschfeld jumped in here, said, for me, with age has come prioritizing what is really important in life. I try to see all the possibilities each day brings and embrace them fully. And that's a great way to put it. Prioritization is, you become really, really good at prioritization when you seek to prioritize your life. And then Lee Freeberg jumped in, what call that the 180 moment. That's a great way. Great line. I like that for sure. And Lisa Meyer jumped in here. Happy Friday. Great to catch you live. Good to see you, Lisa. The question I have for you guys, I wrote down causing a problem. And Travis, you'd mentioned this a second ago, is that we do things the way we do things until they cause a problem. Like we eat from the vending machine all day long until all of a sudden, wait a second, I have high blood pressure, or wait a second, I got fat, or wait a second, right? Those moments in time, I remember actually a little while ago, I realized that my pants, I was wearing 36 waists, and I was like, they started to get tight, and I was like, no, this ain't happening. I gotta go do something. And I was able to I wear 34s now, so I'm very happy about that. But those points in time, they realize there's a problem. And sometimes you have to realize it, or whitewash over it sometimes in life too, is where you just like, I don't want to see that problem. I'm just going to keep doing the things I want to do. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on those moments where you realize that you've caused your own problem. The next steps for you when you've realized you've caused that problem. Where do you go, Shaun? Let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, in regards to the pant size thing, I mean, that's a straight up ostrich head in the sand. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's a total denial of reality.
100%.
And I'm not pointing that at you. I'm pointing that at all of us. I mean, we've all done it. It's not like anyone on the planet is immune to kind of trying to look away from themselves from time to time, not face themselves in the mirror from time to time. But I will say this, that as uncomfortable as it is, and as we all do it from time to time, kind of look away, the reality is you've just got to keep looking back until you can face yourself in the moment and do something about it. And so where it goes wrong, as far as I'm concerned, is we all look away, but do you look back and re-engage again? And so that re-engagement, as Travis did, he painted a picture there where he realized that one day, it wasn't that day, it had been months prior, but one day he realized, holy cronkamole, I'm fat. What the hell? And he decided to do something about it. But he didn't know what until he met a dude who started putting the syrup into his ear, and he, bought into it. And next thing you know, like, he's Mr. CrossFit years later, we'll call it. And so that's how life goes, man. That is how life goes. You look at yourself, you think, man, I'm fat, and then you look away. And then if you look back and face up to it, cool. But if you don't look back and someone slides up to you and whispers in your ear and you ignore that, that's uncool. And so the moment that a good voice says the right thing at the right time and you ignore that I don't let slide. I'll let you kind of ignore yourself a little bit, but when you get a good advice from someone, not from me, from someone on the panel, maybe from your neighbor, maybe, but when you get good advice and you ignore that, that's a different thing. That's a different thing than just cutting yourself a bit of slack. That's you actively disengaging from the reality of the moment. And so I like that Travis bit down on that. I did it myself. This shirt that I'm wearing right now, as a former world champion, that when I first got on a bike and thought, I'm going to do pretty good at this, my wife rode away from me the first time I ever rode with her. Her and her friend rode away with me and I couldn't keep up. And I was like, what just happened? Do you know who I used to be? Is what I was saying in my head. This is impossible. I'm a freak. How can you? What the hell, man? That's what went through my head. And then the very next thing that went through my head was, as I said at the dinner table not too long ago, that'll never happen again. And she's never ridden away from me again. Because I got on with the program. I adjusted that calibration. And that is the trick, I think. You can ignore yourself getting fat. You can ignore yourself getting dumber. You can ignore yourself getting closer to death. You can ignore all of these things. But the moment that, someone says to you, whoa, hang on a sec. If you ignore that, I'm not down with it.
Right on. Now, we are getting a little close to an hour here. I know Chris has a hard timing, so I'm going to give you the opportunity, Chris. Jump in here. Tell us what you think on this one as well, or if you have any final thoughts as well, you can hit those as well, and then you can take off what you need to take off.
Yeah. I think I read a quote recently, and it goes something like, being comfortable is the most addictive drug. And I believe that. And what I mean by that is we won't change behavior until the consequences of our actions surpass a particular pain threshold, right? Like that might be like looking at yourself in the mirror and like, oh man, what happened? Or in my case, procrastination was a huge issue. When I was in college, I had a particular philosophy paper that was due. It was 20 pages, and it was due at the end of the semester. It was assigned at the beginning of the semester. I put it off all the way until the day it was due, and then I sat down and began typing. And I cranked out, 18 pages, turned it in, and I got a B on it. And so there wasn't a significant amount of pain associated with my behavior to actually change my behavior. Like, I essentially got away with it. And we will continue to behave the way we have as long as we get away with it. Same with nutrition. I'm definitely not 20 years old anymore, and I can't consume the same kinds of foods I used to and get away with it. There's an effect it has on physique and body comp. But my behavior won't change until the consequence surpasses this particular pain threshold, whatever that is in each of our eyes. The other thing that came to mind was sometimes people like the idea of a particular state of being, but they don't actually they don't actually want to do the job. The example I often use is folks DM me often on social media in regards to becoming a Green Beret or getting into SOF in some capacity. And I can tell rather quickly whether or not they just like the idea of being SOF or if they actually want to do the job. And those are two very different things. And so, and if you step back and apply that kind of same principle to life in general, I think most people like the idea of being super healthy or super fit or very well read or being able to connect with the kinds of people and have those deep connections that are rare. I love the idea of that, but they don't always like the work that's involved in accomplishing those things. And when we were in Denmark, it was like one of my first trips on my first team. The Jaegers gave us a challenge coin after we left, and along the edge of the challenge coin in Latin, it read something in Latin, but translated, it said, "Rather to be than to seem." And I love that quote because it's like, yeah, I would rather be the thing, whatever the thing is, whether that's physically fit or emotionally intelligent or well read. I'd rather be that than appear to be that, because being whatever it is way more exciting than pretending. There's that level of authenticity that comes with like truly embodying a particular state is almost relaxing, in that I don't have to put up a facade. I don't have to pretend to gain like validation from the people around me because I want them to think I'm a particular way. But rather it's like, dude, I can just relax. I am this thing that I said I was going to be, So those were kind of my thoughts as we were discussing. But yeah, it's most people like the idea of XYZ. Not everybody wants to do the work to make it happen.
That is the solid truth for sure. And I just wanted to first off say thanks for joining us once again. And I know you got to run, but always a pleasure chatting with you. Always a pleasure.
Good to see you, pal. But,
Yeah.
before you bounce, I do want to leave you with this thought, and you already know this. But when you were procrastinating in school and on that last day you turned in that paper, well, at that point, you probably realized that you'd procrastinated, of course. But you'd also, when you turned in that paper, thought, whew, man, I got her done. But here's the interesting part is you could have got that done on day one, and then you would have had an entire semester to do even more writing, to do even more papers, to not just impress upon yourself or the teacher or the system, whatever. That evolutionary engagement of, I banged that out on day one. How many more papers do I have in my brain for the rest of the semester? And so it's like it's lost opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I'm not pointing the finger at Chris. I'm pointing the finger at myself. I'm pointing the finger at everyone. Anyone who's engaged in procrastination, and we all have been. If you're procrastinating, you are creating lost opportunities through the active pursuit of holding off that one thing that probably isn't even that big of a deal. You don't get to put the big deal thing out because you're holding the little deal in front of your nose and not want to get her done. And so Chris knows that, I know that, we all know that, but it's worth relaying it to the audience.
Yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely. And Chris, before you go, I got BJordan729 on the Instagram site. Highly recommend Chris's book. So there you got a free
Hey,
little bump there. Good job.
appreciate the plug.
I love it. And yeah, if you got to run, by all means, you can jump out of here. Anything final say before you head off?
I do want to say I'm just so grateful for you guys. I always love these conversations, and they never feel long enough. We could really sit down for multiple hours and just jam on stuff. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to the next time. And yeah, give me a text if you want me to hop back on. So
Will do. I'll get you up right away with some dates, and we'll get you back on as soon as we can. Oh, look
my
at
man,
that. More. Lisa Meyer. It's a great book. There you go. You got another one.
awesome. Thank you guys.
All right. We'll talk later.
See y'all.
See you, Chris.
Travis, you got any thoughts?
As we talk about all this stuff, I think they're learning and realizing that there was a moment, whatever, there's a change kind of that takes place that I don't know that I can put my finger on exactly when it happened for me, but like there's a change at least in my soldier life, like of having to learn something, like it's a requirement. Like I didn't decide that I have to learn how to operate this weapon system. Like this is your job. You have to do it, right? Your team leader is there to uh make sure that you learn. And he's going to get his job done, which means you're going to learn. And it's a given, right? But at some point along the way, you change from having to do things into wanting to learn things, right? It's no longer you have to do it, you actually desire the knowledge and you seek it out, right? And I think for me, like in younger days, like when discussions were taking place, maybe there's some kind of debate about a particular way to do things or get things done. You're very, very attached to your way, and maybe there's a little bit of embarrassment there that you maybe don't know another way because you just haven't been around long enough to see it done any other way. So in order to camouflage your shame and ignorance, right, you're just adamantly like, this is the right way, this is the way to do it. And it's just because you're humiliated, right? It's your ego showing through, and that still is kind of an indicator of a young man, right? A big ego is usually a young fella. And generally, now that I'm older, I think that's just an indicator that he doesn't know any other way. He hasn't been around long enough, and he's not really, there's nothing bad about that. He's a proud man. He's made it this far, and he just needs a little bit of mentorship, and you need to figure out what button needs to be pressed in order for him to want to learn more things. And I think again that comes with tenure, but at some point you change from having to do and having to learn. There's a transition to wanting to learn new things, and your level of embarrassment for things, like my tolerance for humiliation is very, very high. Like I'm not embarrassed, bro. Like I don't get embarrassed. Like I don't know what that is. I say to flight instructors and things all the time, they'll spit out a blurb, da 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 da. I don't know what that is. Like I have no clue. I've never heard those words spoken in sequence before. You need to explain deeper, where, I just don't have that embarrassment, and I'm able to cut right to the chase. Like I don't know that. And I'm not embarrassed in my own ignorance anymore. It just isn't there. And I think when I was younger, that probably didn't happen. And I think that's a giant step, when you're no longer embarrassed to be ignorant and you allow yourself to be the student. Like, I want to learn. So I'm finding someone who can teach, and I want to learn. So I'm listening, I'm open to that information exchange, and that willingness and desire to accept help is is a big step in that might be like one of those indicators in the phases, Sean, where you now you're like, okay, this is like the worm has turned, like this is definitely not the same place I was in a moment before I made this decision. And it opens things up a lot. I flew with a girl last week, CFI, doing a low wing transition, and she's 20 years old. I'm 52, and she was awesome. She's super knowledgeable, good pilot. Like, she was all over it. And it was a great experience. But at no point was I embarrassed. Like, I've never flown this type of aircraft. Like, I don't know what it's about. I've read a lot, but I've never done it actually myself. So let's learn, man. Let's get it on. And it was a great experience.
I really dig this. I think, and to your point, I want to touch on here is that as a young man, we sought certainty, right? I want to know that this works, and then I'm going to do it that way because it works. I know it works, and to open up that ego a little bit when when somebody else is offering you different ways to do something, that it reflects on that, right? Like, I'm certain that this one thing works because I've done it once. It has proven itself before, and that ability to let go of certainty, I think, comes with age. I mean, the more you experience in life, the more you realize how uncertain life really is and how uncertain you can be in basically anything. I mean, there's a saying that there's many ways to skin a cat, right? You would think skinning a cat would be pretty simple, but you can do it lots of different ways. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do. It's based on what Travis said, and I think he's right. These various phases of life can be like big deals, Oh, there's the first grandkid, shazam. But they can also be tiny little moments that will slip by unnoticed unless you're looking for them, unless you're aware that it will happen to you in the future, such as the time that you realize that there's many ways to skin a cat. And so thinking outside of the box, as it were. And, like, are you supposed to pay attention in, let's say, as a young soldier? Are you supposed to be constantly looking for opportunities to think outside of the box? Or do you have this realization when someone slides up to you, someone with tenure perhaps, looks you in the eye and says, hey, you know what? That was pretty creative. I like it. You should pursue thinking outside of the box a little bit more. Is that a new phase of life? And so whether you notice it yourself or someone encourages you to enter into a new phase of existence, as it were, with a more curious mind, with a less structured solution, as it were, to me, that's a shift in a person if they engage in it. And so here's another little phase of life as a young man, perhaps for me. The moment that I was on my first hardcore course, which was recon or reconnaissance patrolman. And so one of the instructors said almost next to nothing to me throughout the entire course, but I knew he was hawking me. He had a very close eye on me. And I was super freaking young, man. Like, it's not like I was a big deal or I was topping the course or anything like that. Almost like not remarkable. But one day, towards the end of the course, we're almost done, he said, you're pretty good at this. That's all he freaking said to me, man. And you know what? That was enough. That was enough from the right guy at the right time. Said the right thing. You're pretty good at this. And so I could have taken that any bunch of different ways. I could have thought, yeah, I am pretty good at this. Glad you noticed. Or I could have thought, what is he seeing in me that I'm pretty good at this? I don't see that. Anywhere between those two extremes, that's for you to figure out. But if someone throws something down, you're supposed to pick it up and look at it, consider it, think about it. And I thought about it. I didn't think about it a whole lot of time because I was young and dumb. But when he said, you know what, you're pretty good at this, that probably helped to some degree, just a tiny little bit, shift me just a little bit more into that hardcore trajectory of, hey, if I can be good at this, I'm going to pursue how good I can be. So my point is this. Some of the phases in life you'll figure out yourself, but some of the phases of life will be figured out by others for you. And they will let you know in ways that you will either see or not, depending on the moment and how much you're paying attention.
I was that guy on the extreme of, yeah, I am good at this. I was that guy. I had that big ego. And I do remember a couple of times on courses where I always know that the instructors are watching. And if they don't talk to me, that means I'm doing it right. So as long as they are not coming at me, I'm at least doing it right. But I had that big ego. And so I have a question on this, because I used to measure my success by the fact that, I wasn't getting in trouble. People weren't coming to talk to me. Hey, you're doing this wrong. You need to sort this out. So as long as I was within that thing, that's how I measured success. Was like, no one's telling me not to do this, so I think I'm good. And then eventually I got to a point where I started going, okay, I need to measure my success by the success of the people around me. And then I started measuring it differently. And I'm wondering, do you guys measure your own growth or the growth around you differently than you did when you were younger? Like I did? I'm just wondering in general. Travis, what do you got?
I think so. Obviously, like my upbringing, I was in the army, so a lot of what we did, as an individual wasn't really as important as what your team did. You're starting off in the infantry, your fire team, there's always a competition in the squad amongst the two fire teams, who's going to walk point and who's going to not, and then within the platoon, your squads have comps, like, again, who's walking point, like who's going to be the maneuver element, like who the best squad gets chosen for this perceived, uh, you know, honored spot in the formation, when we all know that it takes all the pieces of the pie to make the pie, like there's not going to be a maneuver element without a support element. But if you're on the support element, then you're the sucky squad, like, and it doesn't matter. So you're always kind of like measuring yourself against other elements, within the fire team, which guy's going to get chosen to maneuver on this bunker, like, am I going to be a support element or a maneuver element, so there's always a difference. I think for me, really, when you kind of venture outside of an organized formation and start assessing your own prowess on your just by yourself, there's nobody that's judging me, dude. Like, like nobody's telling me whether I'm doing a good job or not doing a good job. I mean, I'm in school right now, I could look at my GPA and see whether I'm successful or not. I guess I could put an arbitrary timeline, what's the average time period of learning before a rating is achieved. I could do those things, but for me, constant progress is key. Like, I don't like to be stagnant. If I feel like I'm doing the same thing repetitively, that's where I need to reassess. And sometimes you need to step back and revisit basics in order to just kind of solidify the fundamentals again. But that's not how we progress forward, right? We sustain, the fundamentals are sustained through the course of everything we do, but there's obviously, we want to see progress as well. And that's, additional skill, additional proficiency, more knowledge, whatever that may be. Progress to me is a real key, and that's how I judge my own whether I'm doing good or whether I'm doing bad. Is I want to see progress, like daily progress, whether that's a tenth of a percentage point. Progress forward is success. If I somehow gain 10 points forward on a day, that's awesome. That's a great day, right? But as long as I'm making continuous, consistent forward progress, that's what I'm after.
Take it, Sean. What do you think?
I am going to play with it. And it's not that I'm going to disagree with Travis, because I agree with exactly what he just said, but I'm going to play with it in a way that is visual, in people's minds. And so Travis had said that he's looking for forward progress. He's, whether it's 0.1 of a point or 10 points or whatever the case is, however he establishes success, less success, very little success, no success in his day. We'll call it points. It's all about forward progress in his delivery, as he just said. But when you really think about it, evolution is change at its core. That's the meaning of evolution, is change. And so the evolution of a man is the changing of a man. And I'm keeping it super simple. Now, Travis has, in your mind, in the listener's mind, has created a imagery that is forward evolution. But evolution doesn't work that way. Sometimes evolution goes backwards. Sometimes evolution goes sideways. Sometimes evolution breaks itself. You know, the species that was heading in a certain direction, and then it has like a distortion within the genetic chain, and all of a sudden that dies out. That species is gone. But that is still part of evolution. And so, the evolution of a man doesn't necessarily mean that in your mind's eye, you're always punching forward into the future, your magnificent future. Sometimes when you're evolving, you're going backwards. But it's only by realizing that you're going backwards that you start going forwards. And so the aspect of forward trajectory or forward momentum, in our mind's eye, in our human mind, we think of we're punching forward. But that isn't reality. Sometimes we're going sideways and backwards and in freaking circles. And the evolutionary circle of coming right back in the full circle and realizing you were there a year ago and you haven't moved, that realization that you had no forward momentum in that moment is perhaps, for the right person, one of the biggest evolutionary steps a person can make when they realize that a year of my life has gone by and I accomplished almost nothing. If you can sink your teeth into that, that can punch you forward like an order of magnitude rather than what you would have done, which was trickle feed yourself into the future. So there's many ways to kind of consider this moving forward in your mind's eye, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I like it. The idea of mutation, or of like actual evolution and mutation over specialization, all these things I want to touch on really quickly. Before I do, I got a quick comment on the Instagram side. Island Misfit jumped in here and said, during my recce course, when I was given a favorable review, it was followed by my warrant saying, keep the drive, don't let it go to your head. I choose to focus on the first part, keeping the drive. And then he continues, it's important how you interpret both positive and negative feedback. Both are lessons, which is a great point. And I want to go into this evolution side of it because I think this is an important piece. You're right, Shaun, in that an evolutionary chain can just end in that there is a mutation that takes it in a realm that is not fit. But you can also over-specialize where your mutation becomes so critical to a certain environment. When that environment changes, you are no longer fit for any environment because you've so over-specialized on something. And I think this happens to a lot of vets. And I want to use this as an opportunity to kind of help people get out of, not just vets, but people get stuck in a uniform, or they get stuck in a label, or they get stuck in something. They become over-specialized into that particular area of life. And then the environment changes. Something happens. They lose a spouse. So instead of being married, now you're a widow or a widower, or your job disappears because AI took it over. Who knows, right? Like there's ways that all of a sudden you become obsolete in that field. And that transition into the new field, that hard evolution of life, how to manage it. What do you guys think? Travis? What do you got?
I'm still kind of dwelling on the progress and the things that Shaun was talking about on evolution as a term and forward and comparing the two and and contemplating like as a process the evolution. What is evolution? Is it expansion? Is it growth? Is it advancement? Is it moving forward? um you know isn't it perfecting something? Is it or not? Like, and discussing like the what is it? One of the things I really appreciate about this podcast in particular is that all of us come from a military background, but we don't really focus on like war storytelling. We're not here to tell war stories. We're here to discuss life, really. And that's why I enjoy these so much. I think in discussions with other of my peers, there's a lot of information out there that's being offered from fellows with the same backgrounds that we have, and it's kind of the same old, you know. And I think that they might be stuck, Sean, in that place that we once were, where it's like harder, faster, harder, faster, front sight post, harder, one foot in front of the other. And there is no development, there is no advancement, there is no elaboration or progression or anything. It's the same old same. And I think through these discussions that we're having here, you know, we're not perfecting anything for sure, but we are blossoming in some way, right? We're getting there. I don't know how close we are, but it's super enjoyable to go through it, you know, and pitch ideas back and forth, you know. If you know, some of the things that we say to each other, I'm sure, like, you get caught, like I just got caught with Sean's, you know, I was kind of in la la land there, just thinking about it, like, is evolution forward movement? And I'm just like, that's the question that I'm posing to myself, you know. And I don't know if it is, you know. It's could be back and forth, but I do think that evolution is progress, you know. And if you can define progress as forward movement, that's cool, you know. If that's what it takes to get you to evolve. I know, you know, thinking about evolution of my life, you know, social circles change. You know, the guys that were once teammates are far away now. You know, I talk to them once every 6 months, maybe in a quick text, versus every day in the team room. You know, when I hear about one of their family blossoming again, you know, maybe a one of their kids got married, or they have a grandchild now, or something like that. It touches me in a different way than the old Travis. And, you know, I don't think the old Travis was as stoic as I am now, because I think he was just ignorant, you know, and less of a heart back then. And that was just given the times and the places that he existed. That was just the way he was, you know, and it worked. And as I've evolved through that, you know, I appreciate little things more, you know, where my friends, not my teammates, my friends' children graduate from college or get married or have a child or something. It touches me in a different way than emotionally than it would have in the past, you know, where I thought to myself before, like, well, I guess we can't expect you for that inventory then. You know, is my first thought. Now I'm super happy for them, you know. So I kind of just got lost there, Chance, about just like, are we moving forward or not? You know, is
It's all
that
good.
an actual thing? Is it a thing? Um, you know, is regression part of the process? You know, can you get real wackadoo philosophy and say that is, you know, regression is forward movement because it's part of the evolutionary process? You know, oh man, dude, what are we talking about here? Whose crystal ball have you been staring into? And what kind of mushrooms are you eating, dude? You know, like,
Welcome to the show, buddy. This is where
Welcome
we
yeah,
to the
try to get.
you know,
Palantir.
Yeah.
so wackadoo, right? You know, but I really like the topic of it, you know, because I do see now, being older, you know, a lot of my juniors are kind of at retirement age now. Guys that were new guys when I retired, new. They are at command levels now. I still talk to them. You know, my junior Charlie was, you know, he's a sergeant major. You know, and a couple others of them have retired by this point, and they're entering into retirement. You know, I've been retired for 11 years. You know, do we contract, do that? So, you know, still being the team sergeant is cool. You know, and in the afterlife, right? The after army life, it's awesome. Um, you know, and in that I continue to evolve, you know, because I'm continuing to learn after life lessons, you know, after army lessons. I'm still learning it, you know. I want to buy an airplane. Apparently I can't buy an airplane until I get a forever home for my wife. That's a thing.
I think
Uh,
that's the thing. I would say that's probably a good
that's a
call.
thing.
At least make sure that she's got something that she can hang out in. I
You
got
know?
I got a question on this. And just before I do, Dan C jumped in here. He said, 100% Travis, I feel you. I may have become a crier in the last year or two.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, critical because I remember being a new guy at the unit and showing up at the regiment and like watching kind of the senior guys see people show up in civilian clothing and be like, I don't know who that guy is, but they know each other like really well. And it's, you know, dudes from back in the day who've retired and so on and so forth. And then I became that guy saying hi to people in their civilian clothes and being like, hey man, I haven't seen you in forever and you've been out for this many years, etc. And now that I've been out for many years and I see the new guys that showed up at the regiment before I retired are all now senior commanders and sergeant majors and things like that. And it's pretty hilarious to look back on, but that's part of military life to see that progression. Shaun, I think you had something to say a little while ago. I saw you click off, but what do you got?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the evolutionary process, of course, as Trav was talking. And, like, I mean, it's the great thing about these kind of conversations with the kind of characters that we have on the regular on the podcast, like Trav, is the open-mindedness to be able to see where our conversation goes rather than the conversations already being had in the past. Like, we're evolving this conversation as we're talking about the evolution of man. Like, it could have gone in all kinds of different ways. One way that I never want to like take it is back to the same old conversations that everyone's had for decades. And it's not creating any novel thought or novel wisdom or novel trajectories. So we're trying to evolve the conversation on the evolution of man. And so one thing about evolution, whether it's an expansion of yourself or whether it's like, you know, collapsing back into your own dark hole or your own black hole or your own collapsing star, whatever it is, whether expanding or contracting, it doesn't happen without pressure. Evolution requires pressure. The evolutionary process requires pressure. Now, whether it's interspecies or intraspecies is neither here nor there. Evolution requires pressure. And over the grand scale of time, you can see the evolutionary process take effect over millions of years. But where you don't see the evolutionary process is in the second to second, the minute to minute, the day to day. And so often the evolution of you as a person requires introspection and reflection on the past as to who you were not a day ago, but who you were a decade ago. And that's the phases of life. If we're going to carve it into timelines, just look at your life over 10-year periods, perhaps. That's not usually how life works, but for a nice clear number, every 10 years, look at yourself and see what you think of yourself. Have you evolved? And if you haven't evolved that much, it's probably because there wasn't enough pressure on you. And that's either you putting pressure on you to perform in the moment or everyone around you putting the pressure on you to perform in the moment. Evolutionary processes require pressure and time. And so when those two things start working together, you'll change. But it's hard to see it sometimes unless you're looking back far enough to create the proper scale.
This brings up an interesting point in my mind in that I think a lot of times when we think about an evolutionary scale, like you're saying, Shaun, when you think about the long-term image, at least what I see in my head is it's like a line, right? When you think about the evolution of man, let's say like in the physical sense, you look at from great apes all the way up and you see this line of progression. There was this, then there was this, then there was this, then there was this, then there was that. But in reality, there's evolutionary bubbles. So there's certain aspects of a humanoid for a certain period of time, and it looks more like bubbles of like, okay, well, this flourished for a while, and then there, like you said, there's pressure, and then something new happened, and then there was that for a while, and there was pressure. And so when you think of a scale, there's all these little chunks of time, these little bubbles, and I like you're saying in terms of a decade, that's a little bubble. You're going to be something for a while, and then there's going to be pressure at that decade, and you're going to become something else. And I love that, what you brought up there. It's awesome. What do you got?
So, just another little piece on that, then. That is true, as you just described it, the timeline of human history, for lack of a better term. Where it kind of doesn't work that well is the time that we're living in right now. Because our generation, pre our generation, the world kind of moves slow. And I'm not suggesting that, there wasn't a bunch of things going on. World War One was going on. Things were moving fast. But in context of human, like mankind, now, with the advent of artificial intelligence, with the advent of instant communication, with the advent of podcasting, with the advent of anything that is an outside variable or an outside agency that is expeditiously or is enhancing the velocity of mankind's evolution. We are now like hand in hand with the robot. And so the evolution of mankind, or the evolution of a man, is moving away faster than it was 1,000 years ago. And so these bubbles that you talk about, Chance, they did occur. The Neanderthal to this and then this to that. These little bubbles occurred. Right now, our little bubble is not only moving as fast as it's ever moved, but it's expanding at the same time. So it's not just a linear forward punch into the future. It's a linear punch with expansion. And so it's becoming, I'll say it, close to all-encompassing in the very near future as to our evolutionary process. Now, if you haven't thought about that much, that's something to really chew on, I think.
I dig it. Travis, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, scales and time and the ordering of history and events and comparing those, you know, de- depending on what periods you're talking about, like obviously, I think recently in recent history, our ability to access knowledge is just exponentially grown with the internet and all those things, and now with podcasts and news getting out and things like that, it's just so much faster than it was in the past. Like 100 years ago, like newspapers were still getting delivered to everybody's door, and the stories that you read in the newspaper happened last week, which would not nearly cut the mustard today in today's society, right? You need to know what happened 5 minutes ago halfway around the world in order to be kind of read up on current events, and that scale, judgment of scale is and comparing that to the evolution of man, like at the same time we're so learned and educated, it seems that from the old crotchety man's perspective, a lot of young people don't know a lot about general topics. It seems like, wow, you don't really know anything about how the government works, do you? Or you don't understand basic mathematics because you carry a calculator around all the time. You can't write in cursive. Like what? Like, what do you mean? Like, so basic things that we took for granted, as everybody knowing, have fallen off the radar, and maybe that part of our evolution now is like there's a little bit of regression there. Maybe there's going to be a refocusing on those old basic things. Maybe in a couple of years there won't be any iPads in school, and kids will have to read paperback books. To get the value of that knowledge, that they're going to have to hunt down knowledge like we used to have to do in a library. And I really like having digital books myself. I hope we don't go there, but you know, still kind of just pondering evolution as a thing. With this whole topic is very interesting in how it is circular, but it also kind of moves. Maybe it's a spiral. We come around in a circle, but we're a little above where the point in that we're not on the exact same plane now. We're a little bit above it or a little bit below where we were exactly in space before. Though we came around in a 360, now we're a little bit higher than we were, and maybe we'll have to step down a couple rungs once in a while to relearn the things that we already have learned in order to continue up that spiral. Um, you know,
You gave me an image
and
of the
graduate to the next level. You know,
the double helix, the form
yeah,
of DNA, right? You have that constant upward spiral, but
yeah.
you can also
That
fall
was
down that.
good. That was
And
good. I
yeah,
didn't do that on purpose. You caught that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
envisioning the snake that eats its own tail,
yeah.
but
Ouroboros.
but that's right, and but then it's just missing that final bite, and so
Yeah.
it's spiraling like trying to eat its own tail. But it, of
Mhm.
course, I mean, there's many ways to play with the visualization aspect, but really all we're talking about is the pursuit of more or
Mhm.
pursuit of finding, and through the velocity of the pursuit, we're, we're not taken back to the same place we were. We
Yeah.
we just miss it. We just don't end up in that same old place, but it takes us very close to the same old place that we were, just enough so that we can see that we've evolved, if you will.
Mhm. One of the pieces of this evolutionary pie that I really enjoy in, you know, getting to be on this show and in talking to my peers and stuff now that we are all pretty much retired and established in something after the military is like what they're doing. You know, one of my barracks roommate from the infantry back in the day has a farm now, a working farm in Ohio, and he's a farmer, dude. Like former Ranger Battalion guy turned farmer, and it's awesome to see and to talk to him about the farm and to see how his boys are growing up on the farm and doing something that is completely removed all the way from that past life, but a lot of the lessons that we learned, living that life directly apply to what he's doing now, and he's just one of them. Other guys are, they have a career in entertainment industry or, they're a writer now. Like what do you do? He writes novels, like what kind of novels, well, they're not like some high speed military novel. It's like a crime and punishment novel type thing, like it's totally different. And it's just cool to see guys applying those things. And that's an evolution too, is stepping all the way outside of what you're doing today and like, hey man, I think tomorrow I'm going to learn how to fly. And like, where'd you come up with that? I'm not 100% sure, you know? The opportunity presented itself, so I'm jumping on it, man. You know, and then going through that myself and learning something that I was totally ignorant of is again opened up my eyes to more knowledge and continued progress or evolution or advancement, whatever you want to call it. And I think that is kind of the crux of it is just more and new, more and new, more and new, kind of.
There is another piece to this, and you've already nailed it, Trav. And it came about for me just a couple of days ago. I was out in my backyard picking cherry tomatoes. My wife convinced me, Jedi mind tricked me into dealing with tomatoes several years ago. And I wasn't a gardener. In fact, I thought anything that I'd touch with my non-green thumb was guaranteed to freaking die within weeks. And so, but she started off with the whole, hey, could you go water the tomato plants routine? Next thing you know, I actually care about the tomatoes. Next thing you know, I'm loving on my tomatoes. But then, interestingly enough, that year, our chocolate lab who passed away recently, his name was Strider, a 10-year-old chocolate lab. He used to, like that first year, he'd come out with me and like, okay, everyone knows that chocolate labs love their calories. Well, he was order of magnitude calorie. That boy loved his groceries. And so he'd come out in the backyard with me and he'd target lock every single cherry tomato that I'd pick as if I was going to throw it to him. He loved his midair snacks. And he usually got the first cherry tomato. So he wasn't there with me this year. I was out 2 days ago picking cherry tomatoes and thinking about my dog. And I kind of relayed something on Instagram about how I miss my dog, but I'm out here in the garden trying to get my warrior in the garden moment on,
Mhm.
And so a dude dropped to, and I don't know him hardly at all. He's just a recent follower to me, but he seems cool as hell. He dropped me a comment and he said, "That's what I'm seeking right now." They just got a farm, and he's trying to seek some, not solitude maybe, not peace maybe, but trying to understand who he is in those moments, just like I do. And so I think that it's important, just as you said, Travis, just as I'm saying now, that irrespective of what we used to do, I've got a bunch of friends who are doing things that are way different than we used to do. And some of those things are super freaking fascinating and cool to me. Just as some people relate to me that some of the things I do are fascinating to them. And perhaps that's one of the greatest evolutions, is not just our singular evolutionary path forward into the future, the various pipelines that we pursue. It's being able to relay that it's cool as hell
Mhm.
to pick freaking cherry tomatoes in your backyard. It works for me, maybe it'll work for you. That's, I think, what we're supposed to be doing. Not just our little solo journey, but encouraging others to engage in a way that we're engaging, in a way that is exploratory, is curious, is seeing what's in the future. And I think it really promotes it's okay to not understand who you are right now, but that you can understand yourself in the very near future with a curious mind.
This is it's interesting too because when you really stop and process it, you can usually bring it back to a decision point, one branching point of like, this is where it began. Because the podcast is a great example of the evolution of a man, in that not only myself, but yourself and the people around us and our circles have all evolved based on this show. But this show would not be around if I had not decided to start podcasting like 6 years ago, right? And that came from me going to a therapist to the point that I was seeing progress within myself, like I was getting better. And I was like, man, there's all these tools that I'm gaining from my doctor, and I'm not seeing any of my friends use. Well, how do I get them out to them? How do I get these tools to those people? Well,
You find yourself being frustrated by them,
yeah,
those people that seem reluctant to evolve, right? That like they're still stuck with the harder, faster mentality, and you got to train hard to be hard type mindset. And there's something to be said for that slogan in itself. However, like you got to train smart too, and they're just reluctant to do it. It's like almost to the point where you want to just like, you do you, man. Like, keep rocking out, and I'll hear from you when I hear from you.
I've had to
You
do that
know?
with a number of friends, of
Yeah.
people that I used to hang out with that are just like, you know what?
Mhm.
Good on you. Keep going. Whatever
Yeah.
you want to do, right?
It's
And let them evolve on their own pace. That's like we were saying earlier. Some people you're going to try and teach, you're going to try and pass on that information, and sometimes you just got to like,
hmm
well, that's going to hurt. It
Well, it
does.
is going to hurt.
Yeah.
It is going
Yeah.
to hurt eventually.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt in your later phase of life. It ain't going to hurt when you're 30 and 40 and 50. It's going to hurt
Yeah.
when you're 60, 70 and 80. And
I wonder.
I'm not talking about your back. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about your neck. I'm talking about your existence. Like you're going to feel it. You're you're going to look back regretfully when you're in your 60s, 70s and 80s that you didn't make a change when you're in your 30s, 40s and 50s.
Mhm.
And so Chance, 6 years ago started doing a thing with podcasting, trying to be helpful, and maybe not a lot of people listened to him. But here's another interesting aspect of it. Who's he? Who's Chance to listen to? Why would I listen to Chance? Why would I listen to a guy who I would categorize perhaps as that guy doesn't have his act together? But then none of us do. You know? Who's got their act together right now? Who's 100% got their act together? I don't know
Yeah.
anyone. No one.
Mhm.
But I do know some characters, like I would look at Travis as an example, and here's how I would categorize him. That dude was a freaking hard charger. I'm going to pay attention to what he's doing. oh, he's freaking hard charging right now in his current life. I'm really going to pay attention. That's how I think. I try to put 1 + 1 = 2. So I like to categorize it again as not only was that dude super freaking rad, he's also super freaking rad now. I have to have those two things connected. You can't be super rad back in the day and be lame now and I'm going to be interested. You got to be in the game. You got to be in the game. So if Chance would have been super rad back in the day and then immediately gone into podcasting and become super rad like on day one, I'd be interested, but that wasn't the case. And so why did I become interested in what Chance was doing at some point? It's because I like to look at the world as an opportunity to improve something. And I think if you approach the world like that, you will evolve yourself. So, by externally trying to engage with Chance in podcasting and try to make podcasting better for all of us, I was just trying to make myself better to some degree. Anything that we externalize ourselves into will inevitably, if you're trying super freaking hard and doing it righteously, internally you will evolve. And so, taking it back to Travis and not trying to break Travis's brain right now, but if we are focused on forward momentum or forward trajectory, if it's all external, then is our internal also moving along with that same external forward momentum? Or is it compressing our internal understanding of ourselves so we have more clarity? Is it making things muddier or is it making things clearer and smaller? I don't know. But these are thoughts that I have on a pretty regular basis. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think there's different perspectives on that. Exactly. Like, some people are so focused on the goal because they're hiding from something else, maybe, and as long as they have this work to do, and they're charging hard and going for it, then it allows them, it gives them the ability to ignore maybe a problem or a shortcoming that they might have, and they're running rather than progressing forward. That's not always the case. I hope that's not the case for me. I feel like I have reached a point where I really like I enjoy learning new stuff. It's actually pleasurable. um I've reached a point where, you know, partying and that type of lifestyle just doesn't do it for me, dude. Like I'm not into it anymore. Like I'm just not there. Like I don't like that. I like to hang out socially with my peer group and, tell lies and stuff. But like to the level that we were doing it back in the old days when we were a little bit reckless, I don't even, I'm just not down with that anymore. So I am progressing, I think. Um, I want to do better. I want to help other people do better. That's a true desire that I have, and I enjoy it. There is a little bit of selfishness in that because it is pleasing for me. When I see a light bulb go off in a lesson that I've given, and I see the change, in the facial expression and in the eyes of the student, that makes me feel good. And if you want to call that selfish, I mean, go ahead. Then I'm selfish, you know. But it's also helping them, I hope. And I really like that. It really, it just charges my batteries when other people are learning. It's rad. It's super
It's such a
awesome.
great feeling. Such a great feeling. I used to call those aha moments, and you could see the light bulb turn on. They could see the change in their face. They actually got the concept, not just the thing that you're talking about, but yeah, the larger concept of it. I just love this. I have a thought now. Quick comment. Mario Gagnon jumped in here. Great point. Access to knowledge is a big factor in the evolution. That it absolutely is. And then we have Roadrunner on the Instagram side says, Shaun, how's your middle finger? Everyone's tracking your middle finger. And Max Sidney jumped in. He said, I just joined to see Shaun burn Chance. That wasn't expected. You're absolutely right on this. And I should have explained a little bit more was the fact that with that, the beginning of that podcast got me in touch with people that I wanted to know more about. That gave me access to information. That allowed me to evolve as a person, as a podcaster, as a host, as all this stuff. It gave me the time to learn some technical knowledge to get this started. And then Shaun, same deal with you. Somebody handed you a question. Do you know anything about the veteran suicide rate, all that stuff? You made a decision branching point on that, right? You could have just said nope and not looked it up, but you looked it up and then you couldn't unsee it, and then all the things start to converge, right? But I have this image. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's a video. It's going around, and it shows it's a visualization of pi being irrational. And so when you do the math and you follow the grid, it creates you follow the equation of pi, it creates a pattern up until the point that you're about to close the circle. And as that circle's about to close, it just misses the edge of closing that circle and then continues to build another pattern on top of the original pattern. And then just as that's about to close that circle, it misses it by a little bit and creates another pattern. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of the evolution of man, is that it's an irrational equation. It's not a rational A plus B equals C. It is something that is constantly evolving, building new patterns, creating new effects and new visualizations and new overlays onto life that we can then apply to that life. And then we can apply to others' lives, like our children, and those can apply to the community, and we can apply that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have this continually evolving, irrational equation, creating patterns in life that we get to see the world in different ways. At least that's where I'm coming from. What do you think?
Yeah, only if you recognize the pattern.
Hey.
Yeah, only if life gets turned into a meme that's a simple image that you can say, oh, now I understand. But it doesn't work that way. None of that works that way unless these kind of conversations happen. And then after the fact, someone really thinks about it, really thinks about this meme conversation. And so I like the idea. It is an irrational equation that we're all living, and we're supposed to be trying to rationalize it. And how do we rationalize it if it's irrational? Well, that's, you can do it through science, or you can do it through math, or you can do it through feeling, or you can do it through your friends, or you can do it through your, whatever you call your personal advancement, your personal evolution. All of these things typically require metrics for us to ascertain who are we right now and how have we done and what are we going to do next. Without these kind of simple terms, then the meme of pi or the irrational equation just missing the completion of the equation, none of it means anything until you sit down and really think about, what is it all about? As the equation keeps missing itself, it can miss itself forever. But then the question is, what is it all about? Why does it keep missing? Why am I here? The fundamental questions, as it were.
Man, I love it. Quick comment. Kathy Hirschfeld jumped in here, said, like the chaos theory, nothing is consistent. I love this. And yeah, that's the point. It's a theory still. Everything is a theory until we can get actual physical proof of it.
But the chaos theory is a model that is
yes.
reasonably well understood. And the science or the math of chaos theory, the laid out fundamentals of chaos theory or game theory or any theories like that, they are understandable. They're reasonably well defined right now. They may not be perfect, but they're understandable. And so life is that way as well, unless, of course, you've never tried to understand it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we probably all know a bunch of people that have never tried to understand it and are in places that probably they don't want to be. But that is life. Now, we are coming up on 2 hours, and I want to say thanks, Travis. This has been awesome. Chris was great, but he had to leave halfway through I'm not even going to say the word, right? And I just wanted to say thank you guys. Appreciate the conversation. This has been awesome. Let's get some final thoughts. Actually, quick comment. Catherine jumped back in here and said some of the most rational conversations I've had have been with the most irrational people. Interesting. I like it. But let's get some final thoughts. Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain, Travis?
It never ends. I mean, it never ends. Like, I do like that chaos theory. It is like, within all the randomness, there are underlying patterns. We're continuing to learn and to grow, progress forward, regress backward. Like, is forward the way we're going? Are we stationary and this is all not real? Like, and discussing these things is super fun because, we don't have the answer. We're just looking for it. Maybe there is no answer. Maybe we're just provoking each other to do better, and to help other people do better, and discover that learning and growing and all that stuff is really, really, what life is all about, man. That's the spice of it. That's the good stuff, and it's it's taken me a long time to find that out. I wish I would have found it out when I was younger, but that's the way life goes, right? Young people don't know that until they've done it. And then it's like, now I see what dad was talking about, and it just takes you a little bit of life and tenure to earn that wisdom.
I dig it. I dig it. Sean, you got any final thoughts?
And I can't wait to see what else there is.
Oh man, there's so much else too.
So much. The evolution, I suppose, we've. It's not that we've concluded the podcast topic because, of course, as Travis said, we could talk a long time about it. And the reason that I love these kind of conversations is because it has been an evolutionary conversation. So I guess what I'm left with is this, that maybe the only way that you can understand the depth of this topic is to have gone through some evolution yourself. Maybe you were a young buck and now you're a little bit older, you've made a bunch of mistakes and you've got some wisdom, and now you can look back and think, oh, now I understand how life works.
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome to step one, because you've got a whole pile more steps ahead of you, as we all do. But once you realize that first step of, oh man, I've got so much more to do, I've got so much more I can be, how can I evolve? When you start thinking that, now you're in the evolutionary process. Until you start thinking that, you're maybe just mouth breathing your way through life.
Mouth breathing your way through life. I love that. Catherine jumped in here and said, thank you, gentlemen. Lisa Meyer, thank you guys for all you do. I needed this today. Mario Gagnon said, who is to know? We are the evictee? Not really sure. That might be Latin. Dancy, took me 52 years to get a hint. Yeah. And who is to know? We are the beginning of an unimaginable future. Yes, absolutely. I don't have much to add. The only thing I was thinking of right at the end here was the fact that evolution is about fitness. And that doesn't mean like physical fitness. It's how well you fit into your environment. And if you fit really well in your environment, then maybe it's time to evolve. And if there's a little bit of pressure, as Sean says, then maybe it's time to move on to a different level of fitness. Other than that, I got nothing. As we continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week. Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.